Welcome to Her Fantasy Football. You can hear us on Blog Talk Radio / Her Fantasy Football and on iTunes. Make sure to subscribe to us on herfantasyfootball.com so you can get our newsletter where we will send you 4 ingredients for our fun, free FanDuel game called Diced. Also, you can chat with us on Twitter at Fantasy Football, at Her Fantasy FB, one more time, or on Facebook / Her Fantasy Football. And we're not done with our show. We also have another show on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio on Saturday nights from 9 to 11. So you can hear us now twice a week. All right, you guys. I am your host, Courtney Kirby. I am here with my lovely sisters, Ashley Williams, Brandon, Mary, and Lee, who loves to every single time at the beginning of the show hit the YouTube page, because we're on YouTube right now live if you want to come watch us, because it's very entertaining. So you always get to hear us twice. Right over each other. That's okay. It's week 10. Yay. All right, you guys, get these teams out of your lineups. We have the Baltimore Ravens, the Kansas City Chiefs, Oakland Raiders, and the Philadelphia Eagles all on bye. 4 teams, not too bad, especially since 2 of them are the Ravens and the Raiders, so it's okay.
Not a whole lot of plays there.
No. So we're okay. It's not awful. Anything exciting in the NFL news with these 4 teams that we can think of off the top of our head? Nope. All right.
No.
Nope. Oh, status quo. We'll get into the fun and exciting teams for week 10 so we can help you set your lineups for Thursday night football. We have the Seattle Seahawks at Arizona Cardinals.
So must start Jimmy Graham, obviously. He was caught 5 of 8 targets, tied for the second most targets on the team, I'd say, for 59 yards in the loss to the Redskins. Honestly, I thought he would do better since he did have the best matchup on the team. But, Luke Wilson stole a touchdown. So that's happened. He was removed from the injury report this week, so you can at least feel good about that. So you're not benching Graham. You are playing him. Now, in good news, Doug Baldwin owners, I was really nervous for them initially because he was going to have Josh Norman tailing him, but he did great. He caught 7 to 12 targets for 108 yards and a touchdown, and even beat Norman for that touchdown. It was quite a stellar day. I'm not going to lie to you. Now, Arizona's secondary gives up the 4th most points to wideout, so he should have another really nice day. I think we're finally going to see the uptick here of Doug Baldwin. We're going to feel a little bit better about him. Now, Russell Wilson, he did not have that great of a day. His stats were okay. So he threw for 297 yards. He threw for 45 times. 24 of them were completed, though. 2 touchdowns. Sadly, he also had 2 interceptions. Luckily, he ran for 77 yards to make up those 2 interceptions. But he really didn't have that great of a day. He was kind of underthrowing a lot of passes. It was not great. But what I will say is he has thrown for over 37 passes in all but 2 games thus far this season. And I expect that streak to continue this week. I think he will throw for 40 or more this week because it is such a good matchup for the wide receivers. And you can count on Russell Wilson. He still put up good numbers for you, but when you were actually watching the game, it could have been a lot better day. He was definitely not connecting. Now, sleepers, Paul Richardson. He came down to earth a bit with that game because Wilson was struggling, but he caught all 3 of his targets for 41 yards, but Lockett didn't produce as well as we had hoped either. He was still targeted 8 times, which is good, but he only caught 2 of them for 10 yards. And again, a lot of those were underthrown, so I will use the word target loosely there. But Richardson did not practice all week, so it makes it very unlikely that he will play, which does bump up Lockett's value in, again, this really yummy matchup. Bench, Eddie Lacy. I talk about these running backs all the time. Lacy is out this week with a groin injury that he sustained in last week's game. That makes Thomas Rawls the guy, apparently, who rushed 9 times for 31 yards and added 2 catches for another 31 yards. I hate every running back on this team. I want you to bench all of them until further notice, which I don't see happening this year at all. So just don't even count on playing them in any way, shape, or form, to be honest with you. For the Arizona Cardinals, Adrian Peterson, you're playing him. He rushed 37 times for 159 yards, which was absolutely crazy against the Niners. And those 37 carries was a career high for AP. And it was also an NFL record for running back for over a ripe age of 30. He beat out Jerome Bettis by 1 carry, which is
I meant
interesting.
to go back to the previous shows, and mention, like, record you guys telling me to drop Adrian Peterson. It's over. It's done. I need to move on with my life. And me saying, no, I'm not ready yet. No. And then, like, what was it? Another bad week. And then right when we came back, it was like, bam, traded to Arizona.
But you know what? What is the likelihood that he was going to get traded? And I know we talk about this like every single week because I do feel a little bad that we did talk you into getting rid of Adrian Peterson, but you should have got rid of Adrian Peterson on terms of him being on the Saints team. He was incredibly unproductive.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I wish I would have kept him, but I did get him back in 2 leagues, or didn't drop him in 1 league and got him back in the other. But I had to pay money for it, for listening to you people.
Sorry about that. Well, I will say though is that I do think that he should have a decent week still, despite the fact that the Seahawks give the 7th fewest points to running backs. But in terms of people that were able to get double-digit points, Carlos Hyde, Lamar Miller, Ty Montgomery, DeMarco Murray, and Rob Kelly were all able to get double-digit points against the Seahawks. So I think that Adrian Peterson should be fine to do that. And then just quick note, Drew Stanton wasn't as bad as we thought he was going to be, which is good news in terms of that. So I think more importantly is that this is good news for Larry Fitzgerald owners. He caught 5 of 9 targets for 70 yards, and he barely missed a touchdown. So he should have had a really good game. So you can still feel good about Larry. But those are the only 2 starters on this team. I still don't like J.J. Nelson, Jerron Brown, or John Brown because you don't know what's going to happen with any of them. And Jerron Brown, who scored the touchdown, was on his 1 target, so that's not going to help you. And then bench Andre Ellington. We just still have to wait to see how this is going to play out. But if you're in a PPR league and you need a deep dart throw, he's someone that you could consider again, just for the fact that he is kind of used, but I feel like there's better options for you this week. But if you're super desperate, Andre Ellington, you can because he's at least healthy.
All right, we got the Green Bay Packers at the Chicago Bears.
Oh, Green Bay. Wow. How the mighty have fallen. Yowza. Aaron Rodgers, we miss you. He isn't quite sure he's going to come back this season. You don't say.
It's like, we all knew that. Hello.
Yeah. Hello. Okay. This is how I feel about this. The big news of the day happened about 5 p.m. today. Martellus Bennett was cut from the Green Bay Packers. Mm-hmm. Now, he was already ruled out for the game against the Chicago Bears early due to a quote-unquote shoulder injury. However, this cut is supposedly because he did not disclose his injury, and no one's entirely sure what that means. So as of right now, today, on Wednesday, very, very late night / early Thursday morning when we're recording, I don't have answers to this, but do know he's not there. He's on waivers, so that means he could get picked up by another team by 6 p.m. tomorrow, Thursday. That's not going to really help you or your fantasy team, and he wasn't getting anything done anyway. You wouldn't start him anyway. And unfortunately, no one else is getting anything done either because Brett Hundley is on the team. Now, listen, Brett Hundley obviously is in a position where he didn't think he would be at this particular point. But let's put it this way. In week 9, they played against the Detroit Lions, who's kind of mediocre against everything, kind of a medium defense, right? And Brett Hundley was able to score 18 fantasy points in standard scoring for a quarterback. But then it was Jamal freaking Williams who had 1 carry and he got a touchdown.
The worst.
Unbelievable. Randall Cobb was able to get 58 yards. Although he had the least amount of targets out of the top 3 receivers. It was Devontae Adams who had the most targets. He got 53 yards. And then Jordy got 7 targets, but he only got 35 yards. Listen, Ty Montgomery only got 6 touches. And that sounds bad, right? Okay. Aaron Jones got 7 touches and way less yards. This is just dire. I don't know what you do with the Green Bay Packers. And why
would you not be running more when you have Brett Hundley as your quarterback?
I
don't understand this. It's the same Broncos phenomenon. I just can't explain.
I'm gobsmacked by the whole thing. unbelievable. So you can't start their defense. You can't start their kicker. You can't start anyone that's on their team. So it's unfortunate. I mean, literally, I would not do that, especially this week against the Chicago Bears, who have a sneaky good defense. I've been telling you guys this all season. If you look at what the Bears have been able to do right now, they're top 10 in terms of defending against quarterbacks and tight ends. They don't have a tight end. Well, Lance Kendricks is their tight end, but come on now. And then they're in the middle of the pack, but the better middle for everything else. So I don't see anyone scoring more than 10 points on this fantasy team, maybe even Brett Hundley. Sad. In terms of the Chicago Bears, they're coming back off their bye. If you remember correctly, before the bye, they traded for Dontrell Inman, who did not play in the game before the bye because he had just gotten traded. But now he is going to be there. We're not entirely sure what that's going to look like, especially because Mitchell Trubisky has been taking, single-digit pass attempts over numerous weeks, although he had 32 pass attempts in the week before the bye when they were playing down and trying to catch up with New Orleans. Now, he still only put up 9 fantasy points. So I wouldn't get too excited about that. And only 164 yards, which was a season high for him. So I'm not going there. I am, of course, always going to Jordan Howard. And Tariq Cohen is just kind of a decent flex that has a medium floor and not a lot of upside at this point because, again, no one's throwing the ball. I will say, though, Zach Miller's leg supposedly has been saved. There was some question as to whether or not he would lose his leg due to that really tragic injury that he suffered before the bye. Sounds like he did save it. Right now, it looks like it's going to be Deion Sims as the tight end going into this season. And by the way, Zach Miller was the only guy scoring touchdowns with Trubisky under center. So this is intriguing with Deion Sims. Unfortunately, Deion Sims is questionable right now, so make sure to check your injury reports. He did have one big game where he scored a touchdown and 42 yards, and that was in week 6, so it wasn't that long ago. They do have rookie Adam Sheehan, who is the future there, but he only has one catch in the National Football League. It was for a touchdown in week 3, but that's
too dicey.
Too dicey. If there's anyone that I take a dart throw on, it's Dontrell Inman, but I don't love this.
I was offered a trade I'd give up Jordan Howard, and in return, I would get Tariq Cohen and DeShone Kizer.
Why do people do that? I hate dumb trades.
I was like,
trade offers kill me.
It is a super flex league with 2 quarterbacks, but I still was like, I'd still rather not play DeShone Kizer and play Jordan Howard in his place.
Was that in our Brett Evans league?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah.
That person.
Yeah,
nobody's offering me their quarterback. What?
Jordan Howard to give up.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I play Elijah McGuire every week, so there it is. All right, you guys, let's move on to another game of the week. We got the Cleveland Browns, the Detroit Lions. Brandon, that's
Speaking of the Kizer.
I'm still focused on the sad leg story. I'm sorry. It'll always haunt me. So the Cleveland Browns are the Cleveland Browns. So that's sad. But here's what's intriguing to everyone in a fantasy perspective. Josh Gordon has been reinstated, but he will not be back until about Thanksgiving. The problem is Corey Coleman's also coming back. And so the real issue, though, again, and not to be a jerk, but they play for the Cleveland Browns. There is zero upside, especially if both of them are there for them rest of season. And here's the thing. If you are already that far into the season and you're going into the playoffs, are you really going to start Josh Gordon over the people that got you to the playoffs?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I mean, I understand the appeal. Dynasty, go do your thing. If you're in a keeper league, even a really deep keeper league where you keep 10, maybe. Even then, I'm not quite sure. But listen, Corey Coleman says he's fully healthy. He's going to be back pretty soon. And they did spend a lot of draft capital on him and think that he's the future. He just keeps breaking his hand, which is so weird. Yeah. And then we got Josh Gordon. We don't know what he's like. He hasn't played football in you guys, it was 2013 when he had that huge season.
But I feel like people that are Josh Gordon owners, and hey, I like Josh Gordon, they're the same kind of people that like the Joe Mixon, right? They can validate any reason as to why they've kept Josh Gordon and why they will hold on to him through the playoffs. But the question,
Ashley's talking about my husband.
No. Does he have Josh Gordon?
Of course.
Oh, well. But here's the thing. But I don't think your husband or most people would be willing to put him in their playoff lineup. And you were getting really close to the playoffs here, which you're basically wasting a roster spot on this. Like you said, Brandon, unless you're in.
They're saying it's probably going to be week 13.
Right, which
that's
is
December.
That's December. And
are you going to play Josh Gordon
before your
December?
Playoffs? Yeah. I don't think so.
With Deshaun Kaiser as his quarterback. Now you're telling me, oh, he had a bad quarterback before. I think it was Brian Hoyer that he got all those points with. Brian Hoyer is better than Deshaun Kaiser in 2013, I should say. Maybe even today. The quarterback situation is dire around the league. So as far as anyone else, the problem is that they just don't have an offense there, you guys. Again, it's going to be Ricardo Lewis is a PPR guy. Duke Johnson's a PPR guy. If you're desperate at running back, I get that. Isaiah Crowell, it's difficult to know what you're going to get from him. He did have one of his best games of the season with 64 rushing yards and a touchdown. He scored 15.8 fantasy points in standard leagues before the bye. So you'd like to hope that they continue doing that. But again, the problem for him isn't his fault. They have horrible game scripts because they fall behind so quickly. They don't run the ball anymore. So they don't even need Isaiah Crowell. Isaiah Crowell right now is making free money. That's what he's doing. Mm-hmm. He's like going out there, but he knows he's not going to touch the ball because they're always behind. And that's why you can't start their kicker. You can't start their defense. And the Detroit Lions, they like to beat up on bad teams. So I think this is going to be one of those moments. The only person, again, with any sort of touchdown upside is David Njoku, but he has not scored a touchdown since week 5.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
There you go. Always uplifting reports about the Cleveland Browns.
Sorry, everybody.
All right. Detroit Lions, Matthew Stafford did very well last week against the Packers. This week he faces the Browns and should have another very nice game. The stars are all aligned for Stafford to have about 350 yards throwing, 2 or more touchdowns, and an interception. Because surprisingly, Cleveland tends to get 1 interception a game. There's been a couple games they've missed, and we all know Stafford likes to throw 1 interception a game. So it's all happened, but that's fine. That comes with the territory. All right, more Marvin Jones and Golden Tate. Jones has had 2 games back-to-back with over 100 yards. He also has 2 touchdowns last week. In both games, he's had 11 targets. Golden Tate had almost 200 yards in the last 2 weeks put together. No touchdowns, but he's had 7 receptions in each of the last 3 weeks. So I know that the Browns have been really tough against wide receivers, but in PPR, you have to start both Jones and Tate in that order, in my opinion, as always, Jones and then Tate. Amir Abdullah, we had a guest on our SiriusXM show from Detroit Lions. They're like, is it going to be the week for him? Is it going to be the week? No. Wasn't.
He was
surprise,
all real about us, though. He was like, I doubt it.
He's like, we've been thinking that for years. Nope, not. And I don't love him this week either. Cleveland actually gives up the 6th fewest fantasy points to running backs. He was supposed to, as I said, be amazing. He wasn't then. Under 10 fantasy points in standard leagues. That's just not good enough. It's not going to be good enough against the Cleveland Browns for sure. So just be careful, temper your expectations. What is exciting is Matt Prater, number 1 kicker, Detroit defense, number 5. So you can start both of them with ease. All your tight ends, I don't care about the matchup. This is the best matchup for Detroit. I don't care. They're awful. They're on your bench. They shouldn't even be on your bench. They shouldn't even exist in the fantasy world, but I just want to let you know that's where they are. All right, the Los Angeles Chargers off of bye the Jacksonville Jaguars. AFC champs.
You guys, the Jags still look good. I know I jinxed the Buffalo Bills, which by the way, people were tweeting me about that.
Yep.
They were like, way to go, Brandon. You totally jinxed the Buffalo Bills and them being in the AFC Championship. But I still believe, people. You can't fool me. All right, you guys. So, again, another team that's coming off a bye. Because actually, it was funny. Last week, we were doing our write-ups. And I said, you know what? All of my teams are on bye. I have like 4 teams going. So anyway, this week I'm saying everyone's coming off a bye because they are. So Melvin Gordon before the bye, though, had a huge week. 132 rushing yards, rushing touchdown, 19.9 fantasy points, standard scoring. Listen, when he plays, he's usually a baller, but he did have some injury issues. Hopefully he's A-okay, has a week to rest up. They have to run the ball against Jacksonville. That is the only way they're going to score points at all against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Everyone else, and I'm talking Keenan Allen, I'm talking Hunter Henry, I'm talking, I don't care what you're talking about. I want them on your bench. Okay, maybe Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry is the second most favorable one. But the problem with Hunter Henry is we just never know what's going on with this guy. Last week, only 11 yards and 2 catches. So I don't know how you trust that against Jacksonville Jaguars. But the point is, all the wide receivers, Phillip Rivers, absolutely no. And actually, I want to read something to you because this is incredibly fascinating to me. Okay, Jacksonville Jaguars. Only one quarterback this entire season has scored more than 11 points. It was Marcus Mariota in week 2.
Oh, it was like Deshaun Kaiser.
Jacoby Brissett had 11 points in week 7. But Ryan Mallett, I know that's terrible, obviously. Both of the Houston quarterbacks in the first week. Ben Roethlisberger, Jared Goff, Andy Dalton, all single digits, you guys. Phillip Rivers, put him in. It's over. So
I mean, you're not exactly naming like stud quarterbacks, but I would say Phillip Rivers, Roethlisberger, and McCarron. Yeah, Goff. They're all in a similar realm.
McCown is a top 10 guy right now. All I'm saying is that I would be shocked if Phillip Rivers got double-digit fantasy points, and I would be over the moon, like dying, if he got over 13 points. Like, you can't do it. No one's done it this season. Don't do it. So, yeah, that's the whole trip. There's nothing else to say. I wouldn't start there. And by the way, kicker, defense, no.
All right. Ashley, what about the Jags?
Will you start in the defense? Because Phillip Rivers just can't help himself. He can't help himself. He loves to throw. And he loves to throw interceptions. So
he's being better this year with it.
He's being better this year, but to sit there and think that he would throw like under 20 passes is just like ludicrous. It's not going to happen. It's Phillip Rivers. But again, they will rush, and Melvin Gordon will score on the Jags. But that's not where you're going to get your points. You're going to get your points on sacks. You're going to get your points on potentially a pick 6. This is why you are playing the Jags defense still this week, regardless of Melvin Gordon on the team you're playing them. You are also playing Leonard Fournette. Wow, did that hurt a lot of people. I remember waking up and was like, oh my gosh, he's not playing. He's not playing.
Crazy.
I had him in my FanDuel lineup or Dice lineup, and I had to switch everything around because of that.
No, what really messed up was that I picked up TJ Yeldon everywhere, and he was absolute dog poop.
Yeah, no,
that's what hurt my whole soul. Oof.
Well, Fournette hurts your soul more than Yeldon.
I don't have Fournette anywhere.
Yeah. Well, for Fournette owners, that was brutal. Coach Doug Marrone expects Leonard Fournette to play. I think he learned his lesson. It's really interesting listening about, which I wasn't surprised about, how a lot of times star players kind of, are treated with, gloves a little bit, but no, this is a Coughlin organization. So the organization stood behind, Coach Marrone wanting to bench him, and they did it. And so I think that was a good idea. I think this will be good for Leonard Fournette moving forward. It didn't help you last week, but he should play this week, and he should be good. It's a great matchup. So expect him to be, I'm going to say, as great as usual, and perhaps better, because I think he's going to give a little bit extra this week because of what happened last week. So you are good to go when it comes to Leonard Fournette. My sleepers, Marquise Lee, he's getting a lot of targets. He's targeted 12 times last week, caught 8 of them for 75 yards and a touchdown. He's now had at least 70 yards in 3 straight games. And then when we look at his targets, it was 10 3 weeks ago, 6, and then 12. So it's a healthy number of targets on this team. The issue is that his knee has been bothering him for most of the season. So he's been kind of limited in practice. So keep an eye on potential inactives for Sunday. But if he plays, he's someone that you could consider. I don't know. Allen Hurns, he just doesn't get the volume that he needs. Only 31 yards off 4 catches. I just think there's enough teams on bye to roll the dice with Allen Hurns. Now, Chris Ivory, I'm okay if you want to roll the dice on in a flex roll, because as Courtney said, TJ Yeldon, well, I know he had a great week 2 weeks ago when Fournette was out injured. Ivory is the number 2 back, as we discussed on this team. He rushed 20 times for 69 yards with Fournette out and then caught 34 yards on top of that. Fournette is back, so Ivory will not get that same production. I never said that he will, but it is a really good matchup. So I could see him potentially still getting enough points because they did still use him even when Fournette was playing. What this does is this makes Yeldon completely inconsequential for you. He loses his value at this point in time. And then bench Mercedes Lewis. Yes, he had a decent game last week, but he has a terrible matchup against the Rams, who've only given up 1 receiving touchdown this entire season. And that is where Lewis's value solely resides. So way too dicey of a play. And what I will tell you is keep your eye out for Dede Westbrook to potentially come back to be activated. That will potentially have a big role on what we see between Marquise Lee and Allen Hurns. I don't know where this is going to come in. I kind of have a feeling it may impact Lee a little bit just because of the injury. And they're more of a similar style, but something to keep an eye on.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Indianapolis Colts. Brandon.
Why do I have all the dramatic teams coming off of bye? So,
feels
if you
right.
remember before the bye, Martavis Bryant was sat as a disciplinary measure, and then Juju Smith-Schuster went off, and everyone has decided that he's the next Reggie Wayne or something. Bad news for you. Martavis Bryant is back and practicing with the first team. There's a possibility that we're going to see. Listen, I think that, again, I told people to start him when Martavis Bryant was out and that this could be this, crazy game. And it was a great matchup for him this week and, not so much. So, okay, here's the thing. It is still a great matchup for Pittsburgh. They are on the road, which, as we know, Ben Roethlisberger is not known for his great home and away splits. And even though Juju Smith-Schuster had that killer game and everything else was going right for him, Ben Roethlisberger did throw for over 300 yards, but only threw 1 touchdown.
Yeah.
And an interception, and he just kind of had like a ho-hum day. It was like 15 fantasy points, just ho-hum. Now, at this point, we have so many horrible quarterbacks in the National Football League that maybe ho-hum is fantastic for you, and I get that. But I certainly don't think this is going to be like a monster day, even though it should be, because Indianapolis literally is in the top 10 and giving up points to every single position except for tight end, and you're not going to start Jesse James anyway. So you're starting Le'Veon Bell. You're starting Antonio Brown. You can flex Juju, I guess. And by the way, he did get his driver's license, still riding his bike.
That a boy.
That's an
That a
update.
boy.
Update for everybody. But yeah, from a fantasy perspective, I just think that there's going to be a possibility that we're back to this kind of annoying split that just no one's all that productive. But again, it's Indianapolis, so certainly it is.
So everyone's productive.
Yeah, and obviously you want to start the defense and you want to start their kicker because it's all amazing. In terms of what's going on with the Indianapolis side of this matchup, listen, Indianapolis did well against the Houston Texans, specifically Jacoby Brissett, who we said was one of the best fill-in guys when we heard about Deshaun Watson's injury, put up almost 20 fantasy points. It was really good. So that's great. Pittsburgh's a tough defense, though. I don't like this one. That's why you got to play the matchups with these guys, especially if they're not an elite talent. So Jacoby Brissett, not so much. T.Y. Hilton, thank you. I told you guys it's going to be a huge game.
Yeah.
So annoying. I was playing against T.Y. Hilton, and that was the most annoying. Maybe
It's
the
so
most
good,
annoying
Brandon. You're
game
like,
for me this
I
season.
text you. I was like, Hilton. No,
Yeah.
what was it? I can't remember.
It was Hilton and Higbee.
Higbee, yeah.
The two people that I was like, this is the week. I wouldn't start them any other time, but this is the week. Well, the thing is with Hilton, unfortunately, he has 3 games where he has over 150 receiving yards, and everything else has been garbage.
Like 3 points.
3
Like,
points.
Ridiculously bad.
I think this is going to be a 3-point game, you guys. The Pittsburgh Steelers gives up the second fewest fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. That is just not something that you want to sign on for with T.Y. Hilton, with Dante Moncrief. The only person, again, that you're starting regardless of matchup. And in this game, probably the only person I suggest on this offense is Jack Doyle, because the guy cannot stop getting targets.
I just want to say, I love that the defenses we are concerned about this year are the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Chicago Bears, and my favorite, the New Orleans Saints.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It's
Yes.
like Denver Broncos, Kansas City Chiefs, No. New England Patriots. What? No.
No, you're
No.
right.
The Saints.
The Saints. I know, it's so weird. And I mean, you guys, but especially these teams with these really bizarre quarterback situations, which again, Andrew Luck, last week we were told he was ruled out for the season. Now, actually, Vegas has an over-under, or you can go and bet in Vegas as to whether Andrew Luck ever plays football again.
Really?
Oh, that's harsh.
Mean.
It's very questionable, you guys, as to what's going on there. But, again, last week, Jack Doyle, 9 targets. He caught 8 of them for 63 yards. The week before, 14 targets. He caught 12 of them for 121 yards and a touchdown. I mean, the guy hasn't had less than 7 targets since week 4, because he didn't play in week 5. So he didn't get any targets, but he didn't play. And he has only had less than 7 targets in 2 games all season. It was week 1 and 3. Wow. That's 7. I said 7. That's bananas. So anyway, so he's the only guy that I'm suggesting here. I'm not starting their kicker or defense. Obviously not their defense. Also, Vontae Davis is probably going to be out for the season on their defense. So you'll literally never start their defense
again. It's a big loss for them.
So there you go. Done.
All right. The New Orleans Saints, the Buffalo Bills, Ashley.
So I'm probably going to get a little bit of flack for this one. I'm used to it. But Drew Brees, he had a very average game, 22 of 27 for 263 yards. He did have 2 touchdowns, which was great over the Bucs. But he is playing away and in Buffalo. So this is not my favorite situation. I usually say you always play Brees. But if you could find another option, and I'm talking about a reasonable option here, people, I think you should. I'm usually one that literally says you always play Brees. But when you look at how other quarterbacks have done against the Bills, it's not pretty. We're talking like 10 points is kind of are you're averaging, some of them upwards of 15, but it's not a great matchup for him. So just as an FYI, if you do have another option, you probably don't. Again, only reasonable. That's why I still have in my starter category, but I want to set those expectations that I don't think this is going to be a huge game. Michael Thomas, why do you make a liar out of me?
Liar!
I said this is the week you score. This is when the touchdown is coming. Well, it didn't. It didn't. He did still have 11 targets, caught 8 of them for 65 yards. But again, still didn't get the touchdown.
It is Mike Evans, though.
Yeah, it is a tough matchup this week. So this will not be the week he surpasses 90 yards. And I don't think it's a week that he gets a touchdown either. So add to the fact that he is a little beat up and was limited in practice on Wednesday. And I'm not feeling supremely confident about Michael Thomas this week.
He's going to make a liar out of you again. This will be the week he gets
like
175 yards.
Yeah, he'll pull a T.Y. Hilton on me, maybe. Could happen. Could happen. But I mean, it's not been bad numbers all year, but it's not wide receiver 1 numbers that you're looking for. So it's tough. It's tough.
None of the wide receivers. I actually asked this question on Twitter. Who are the elite wide receivers in the league right now? Honestly, Antonio Brown, DeAndre Hopkins. Is there anyone else?
Well, you could have said Will Fuller at one point.
Yeah.
Is Julio Jones? I don't think he's an elite guy anymore.
Well, he's elite, but he's not a sure bet. Nobody else is a sure bet. AJ Green's been a decent.
He's been decent, but I mean, T.Y. Hilton's been a disappointment in his random games. Michael Thomas, Demaryius Thomas, Keenan Allen hasn't been what everybody was always hoping for. It's tough. That might be one of our good social media questions, Brandon, for serious about which elite receivers are the biggest disappointment.
Well, the problem is the bad quarterback play is really affecting people. Like T.Y. Hilton, his talent has not decreased.
It has.
You can tell, but how do you get elite numbers with the situation?
Well, and I think for Michael Thomas, it's because the running game is doing really well in New Orleans. I mean, they're my starters. And so I think, when you're looking at Drew Brees only throwing in the mid-20s, that's not Drew Brees. Drew Brees was the kind of guy who was throwing Russell Wilson numbers, 30, 40 targets a game. And he's not doing that right now. Right now, he's throwing mid-20s, which is just not what we are accustomed to for Drew Brees and his 5,000 yards that he always throws. This might be the first season he doesn't get his 5,000 yards. And that's just going to be crazy. And it's because they have such a better running game, which is why you are starting Alvin Kamara. He was 6 to 7 targets for 84 yards and a touchdown. He also rushed 10 times for 68. And a touchdown. He just lit it up. He really tore it up last week. Now, Mark Ingram also rushed 16 times and had 77 yards. it was still a good game. It's just Kamara stole all the touchdowns. So the running backs have the best matchup on this team for the week. So I expect both of them to have a really good game. And again, if you want to blame someone like Michael Thomas, you can blame the good running back play because that's really the cause of it. Sleepers, Ted Ginn, he caught 4 of 5 for 59 yards and a touchdown. And what I want to point out is that Snead's involvement has increased, but Ginn is still able to put up the numbers like he has all season. This has been the biggest concern is, okay, well, what is this ratio we're going to see when Snead does come back? But it seems that, Ginn is still doing well. I mean, he's an incredibly resourceful player, and he's one of those guys that just kind of, shifting is able to get open. So he's a really solid streamer flex play. I don't know if I love it this week, but I think he's in general a good option. And Willie Snead, as I said, he's on my bench, but he did at least play 30% of the snaps this week compared to like the one snap he was in last week, but he wasn't targeted a single time. So he's still not someone that you can put in your lineup as he's not even being targeted at this point. So for the Buffalo Bills, this one's even more short. Calvin Benjamin did not play last week. He should play this week. But I have everybody in the sleeper category because no one has a great matchup on this team. So they are all sleepers, like literally no one. Yes, you have to play McCoy, but after last week, it's hard to express, confidence in this week because it was just really, really bad last week.
Yeah, and everyone thought he was going to kill it.
He should have.
He usually murders the Jets, and I mean, it's nuts.
It's nuts.
Yeah,
it's nuts.
Yeah, but it's hard to be confident after that, right? Charles Clay, he might play this week, which is kind of exciting and intriguing. He is practicing on a limited basis after being out since getting hurt in week 5. But here's my issue is Clay is Tyrod Taylor's happy little place, but it's a bad matchup. It's a really bad matchup. And we also don't know what Clay's role looks like with the addition of Calvin Benjamin to this team. So that brings us to our wide receivers, in which Zay Jones finally stepped up a bit, having the best game of the season for him thus far. But again, we don't know how everything's going to play out with Benjamin on the team for him or for Matthews. When we look at these matchups, wide receivers, it's the 11th fewest points given up, 13th fewest to quarterbacks, 13th fewest to running backs, 8th fewest to tight ends. They all have just not great matchups. And as we said, the Saints defense is better than you think. It's a little bit deceiving. So they're all sleepers. You're probably going to be forced to play some of them. But again, I don't get too excited about this matchup.
All right, now this is the game of the week. Just kidding. The Jets are going to destroy the Buccaneers, the New York Jets, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All right, the Jets. All right. Austin Seferian-Jenkins. You may need to look elsewhere for a tight end. I'm just going to be honest. Jenkins was only targeted twice last week, and Tampa Bay gives up the 6th fewest fantasy points to tight ends. So this is the worst matchup for the Jets. I think that they're going to find an opportunity elsewhere this Sunday. So I don't love Mr. Jenkins this week. Robbie Anderson, on the other hand, had his 3rd game with a touchdown in a row.
Yep.
Unlike tight ends, the Bucs are awful at covering wide receivers. So you should start Anderson for sure this week. The Bucs typically only let one wide receiver get the fantasy points. So that is why Curse is ranked where he is. But if you need a flyer, there are worse options out there for sure. But I do love me some Anderson. The New York Jets defense is ranked number 11. So if that's good enough for you, you should definitely start them against the Bucs, and I will tell you why. And Josh McCown is also ranked number 11th in our rankings. McCown's game wasn't amazing last week, but it wasn't awful either. This is a great matchup for him. 3 of the last 4 quarterbacks have had over 18 fantasy points against the Bucs, so that is good news. All right, Forte was a beast last week and got over 20 fantasy points. Unfortunately, that's not good for a man his age. And he is now questionable with swelling in the knee that he had surgery on and was not practicing Wednesday. I know, scary, super sad. Just when you need him, he's got.
Matt Forte is like classic.
He is a classic. He is. He's like that.
Started a little rough.
85 Mustang. I know nothing about cars, but
is that a classic?
I don't know. That was the year I was born. I'm sure it's great.
Yeah.
So listen, if he doesn't play, you're going to need to rely on Elijah McGuire. And don't worry, he's already in my lineup because that's how bad one of my teams is. And below Powell remains a good flex option. That's what he is. That's what he'll always be. You can start the kicker. As far as the Buccaneers, no Mike Evans, no Jameis Winston. Mike Evans has been suspended for a game with his fight he had last week after the late hit against Fitzpatrick. Right after they lost Jameis.
Oh, yeah, Fitzpatrick,
right after they lost Jameis Winston due to the injury. No, Jameis Winston started the fight on the sidelines. Poking the bear.
Did you see that weird pre-game speech?
No.
There was just a lot of weirdness going on.
You guys, so Jameis Winston's like walking around. I'm going to try to do it. This is bad. And he was like, says like, watch me, or I don't know. And he's like, what's this? And then he goes, see that? That's a W. Like, you want to eat the W. And he starts putting the W in his mouth. It was the weirdest. It's like, am I on acid? Like, what's happening? It was
amazing. They popped him with too many pain medication for.
But I always think of like Fitzpatrick on Hard Knocks after one of Winston's like pump up talks, and then Fitzy just so deadpan. It's like, a little long, man. It was a little long. You know? Like I can just see him with the slurping of the W. Like, you don't need the W.
It was like Hard Knocks on crack. That's what this preseason and like people started like tweeting the video of it and being like, did this really happen?
Mm-hmm.
Is this a thing? And here's the thing. It got weirder because then all of a sudden there's fighting and he's poking and Mike Evans just like flies.
Yeah.
And by the way, so many fights. AJ Green.
So many fights.
I mean, everybody was fighting all weekend. Was something in the air? I'm not into astrology or anything, but is that a thing? Did something happen?
I'm not into astrology either. I don't know.
It was salute to service week, and I'm like, with the military, maybe they felt like they were like in combat and they just felt like they could just like go to town on each other or something. It was nuts. I swear.
It was weird.
There was something.
I do want to do a shout out to the NFL for the salute to service and all the crazy money that they raised on Sunday with hashtag salute to service. So hopefully they do that again. I know we tweeted out. Hopefully you guys did too. That was pretty awesome. But we'll get back to the depressing Buccaneers because guess what? Deshaun Jackson is now again the number one wide receiver on an NFL team. And guess what? Fitzpatrick is the starting quarterback on yet another NFL team. So good. I will say this. When Fitzpatrick played last in week 6, he managed over 20 fantasy points. So don't be too discouraged. He could be decent, and this is a good matchup.
And it's a revenge game.
And it's a revenge game, yes. And Deshaun, well, that's not necessarily good anymore.
Yeah, I don't think Fitzy does revenge.
Revenge games in 2017 have yet to pan out. But I will say Deshaun Jackson is an elite wide receiver. So I'm excited that he's going to get this opportunity. He hasn't done much, though, this year for the Bucs. So I think it's good with Mike Evans out that Winston's out too, so maybe he'll get a fair opportunity to show what he's got left. Doug Martin, the Jets have been sneaky good about protecting the running backs or not letting the running backs through. The ones that they're actually least successful to is receiving running backs, and that's not necessarily Doug Martin. So I don't love him this week. He's a temper your expectation dude for me. My guess is they're going to want to make Fitzpatrick throw, so they're going to stop Martin, but we'll see. I mean, I think I'm still starting Martin in my leagues, but just know that it might be a little tougher of a day than you think against the Jets. As far as Cameron Brake didn't hit his usual 60 yards and or more like he has the last 5 weeks, but he still is top tight end any way you slice it, so this is a great matchup. You're going to start him.
And how could he? That was the weirdest game of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really was. It really was. Yeah. All right. You're not going to start the kicker. You're not going to start the defense. They're on the bench. And again, Fitzpatrick, I think, might be a sneaky play, especially in DFS. All right. We got the Minnesota Vikings and the Washington Redskins.
I just can't stop laughing about Fitzy. A little long, man.
Little more.
Minnesota Vikings. Kyle Rudolph, guys. He did pretty well. I mean, not yardage. He only got 27 yards off 6 catches off the 7 targets, but he got a touchdown over the Browns. So Washington is given the 4th most points to tight ends, and he should have another good week as they have allowed a touchdown to a tight end in half of their games. So there's a really good chance that Kyle Rudolph can score it yet again this week. So yeah, in a very dicey position of the tight ends, that's a pretty good dice to roll there. So I like him. And I know that Baldwin was able to blow up Norman, but I'm not feeling amazing about Stefan Diggs this week. I don't know. Last week he got 4 of 6 for 27 yards against the Browns. But what I will say is he does look healthy. And he almost connected on a couple deep balls last week, which would have definitely improved his score. But I just have this nagging feeling, kind of like when he got hurt last season and he had a little bit of a lull period before he got back to balling a bit. I feel like we're still in the lull. I don't know. What do you, Isley? Do you feel that way? Is it just me? It's got this weird feeling about Diggs.
No, I have him ranked lower than Thielen, but I do have him ranked high. So
I mean, he could produce. I mean, again, Baldwin was able to beat Norman. I mean, Baldwin had a great game. Stefan Diggs could have a great game. I don't know.
Well, Norman's getting back to health too, so he's getting healthier by the week. So maybe he's healthier now too. To me, Diggs is risky.
He's still on my start.
Yeah,
but I just I don't know. I just have
get it.
I got that nagging feeling.
But again, there aren't a lot of good receivers.
There's not. There really aren't. So. And this is a tough matchup in general against the Redskins. They give the 5th fewest points to wide receivers, regardless of just Josh Norman. Like, obviously, Josh Norman is one of the elite cornerbacks in the league, but they're a good secondary in general. So they didn't look as solid last week, but, Wilson it was more Wilson just not connecting. So let's hope that Keenum can connect like he did last week to Adam Thielen, who caught 5 of 10 targets for 98 yards and a touchdown. What I will say is be prepared for more so around 60 yards. That's what I think we're going to get out of Thielen. 60 yards, maybe a touchdown, which is still good, but I don't think he's going to put up nearly 100 yards this game. Now,
I got a Thielen.
Brandon's husband loves to sing that song. Jared McKinnon, I do
all
feel
the
good
Thielen
about.
songs. We have like a medley in our house. We do Thielen medleys. Try it out. You'll be happy.
Insert Thielen for Thielen in all songs, and you will have Brandon and Carson melodies.
It has yet to let us down.
Well, there you go. Well, let's hope he doesn't let us down this week. But
he
Jared
hasn't
McKinnon,
yet.
Well, that's not as great weeks, but Now, Jared McKinnon has the best matchup on this team, and I feel good about him. He caught 6 of 10 targets for 72 yards, and he rushed 14 times for 50 yards and got a touchdown rushing. And he continues to perform despite the committee that he is in. Yes, this is a committee. Yes, they are both getting touches. But what I will say is, he put up similar numbers in the last 3 weeks out of the last 4 games. And I think you can expect the same, which is basically 50 or more yards and a touchdown. This is what you're going to get out of Jerick McKinnon. So you can't complain about that. I feel all right about it. So that brings me to my sleeper, Latavius Murray. He certainly is getting the touches. He rushed 19 times last week. Granted, it was only for 39 yards. But if you need to throw a dart on someone for a flex, throw it on someone that at least is getting the volume, right? Where at least he could break off for a touchdown. He could at least get used on a goal line carry. He's being utilized on this team. So for me, I'd rather take a dart on that in a good matchup, best on their team, I should say, than somebody that's only, going to catch maybe 1 or 2 balls and you're hoping for that deep ball threat for the touchdown. So he's an option. Bench, just a quick note for the bench because you're not playing them. Vikings play Sam Bradford on IR due to his knee injury. It did end him for the season. He had surgery to kind of clean it up and relieve discomfort. This made room for them to activate Teddy Bridgewater from the PUP list. Bridgewater is practicing in full. Case Keenum is still the starting quarterback as of right now, but I do think there's a good chance that we could see Teddy Bridgewater by the end of the season.
Today.
I'm excited for him.
Scary Case Keenum.
Scary Case Keenum. Listen, he's winning games.
He's winning games. I was actually going to say he's a potential sleeper, but I just don't love him against the Redskins. But he is.
Yeah. It's not translating necessarily in fantasy points, but it is exciting that he's doing well enough for his team.
Yeah.
So, all right, the Redskins, listen, I hate this team more than anything. And last week did not change my mind. God, it's the worst team in the NFL to have to cover. And my in-laws were in town, and my father-in-law watched every single game. I went to every single game for 2 years straight of the Redskins in the 80s. And it's really upsetting because I had to keep my anger inside when I wanted to just yell at the TV screen every single time they showed them. I will say this. You can't start any of them. Can't start any of them. They're all absolutely awful, and it's not their fault. The coaching is absolutely terrible. Absolutely terrible. So let's just get to the very nitty-gritty of it all. Jordan Reed is questionable, but he is back at practice. Now, why they would ever put him in before he's fully healed when they have somebody called, I don't know, Vernon Davis is beyond me.
I didn't even rank Jordan Reed. I'm making a statement.
It should be Vernon Davis. I don't understand
Good.
why this is even an option.
Good, Brandon.
Stop it.
But you know what? It's too bad because Gruden doesn't care about you or your feelings. And he does whatever he wants. And he's not very smart. So I can't tell you who he's going to start. But yes, Jordan Reed is back at practice for those Reed owners. So silly.
Which hopefully you didn't use our cheat sheet.
Yeah, right.
Oh.
Jamison Crowder, he's questionable. He's also back at practice, but does it matter? No, it doesn't. You're not playing him. Chris Thompson, clearly the best player on the team. Absolutely awful the last 2 weeks. Absolutely awful. And I can't blame him. He's rushed 4 times in each of the last 2 games. How can you do anything with that? You get 3.1 fantasy points in standard leagues. And I just it grosses me out. It grosses me out. I don't even want to get into Kirk Cousins.
And somehow they beat Seattle.
I know. Somehow they beat Seattle with 17 points. I don't know how they did it with Fat Rob. That's how they did it. Whoever that guy is, because he's not owned in any leagues because he's been awful too.
It hurt.
I need to move on. You're not starting any of the wide receivers, okay? None of them. Don't do it. I'm saying you can start Chris Thompson because hopefully, Gruden will use him more. But Minnesota is the toughest against the running backs and the quarterbacks, the 2 best people on the team. So, okay, actually, I'll take it back. The only person you can start is Vernon Davis if Jordan Reed is benched. I'm not even starting Jordan Reed if he's playing. All right, we're going to move on to even more depressing news. We have the Houston Texans at the Los Angeles Rams.
Oh, it's going to be another blowout.
Another blowout. But I do want to say congratulations to DeAndre Hopkins. I feel like you've gotten your quarterback proof status back.
Yeah,
really
I would agree.
The cred is back. Yes.
The cred is back. The cred is back. Good job. Brock Osweiler did not ruin you. You were fine. You can play with crappy.
Savage threw a dart in there on one of those touchdowns too. Like
1 out of many.
Really? Yeah. I mean, maybe it was a dart. He had a very small space and he placed it perfectly, which I was shocked. I didn't think he had it in him, to be honest with you.
Brock couldn't have done it. So
Brock could not have done it.
No,
Savage
absolutely
did.
not. Absolutely not. So Hopkins is the man. He still managed to get 14.6 fantasy points in standard leagues with Savage throwing the ball. So I think you can start him again this week against the Rams, who are really tough, but it's fine. Okay, we're going to work through this. Now, Miller wasn't great last week, but he has the best matchup for the Texans. So I feel better about him. I believe this is the high hopes, low expectation player of the week is Mr. Lamar Miller. I think you still have to start him. It is what it is. This team has just came from the top to the bottom so fast. This is how the cookie crumbles, guys, in 2017. But you're still starting Lamar Miller. Will Fuller, though, on the other hand, this is risky, you guys. The Rams give up the 4th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers, and we all saw the struggles of last week. No touchdown for the first time of the year. I only had 32 yards. I like him. I like him a lot next week. So don't drop him or anything crazy just because you're ticked off. Don't do that. He'll have a good game next week. This is just not the week. Not the week. Tom Savage obviously is on the bench. Ryan Griffin, just in case you care, doubtful with a concussion. Sorry for him, but he shouldn't be on your fantasy teams anyways. And you're not starting the Houston Texans against NFC champions, the Los Angeles Rams.
Very possible. Again, it should be
Coach of the year.
Sean McDermott,
Yeah.
Sean McVay, or
Coach of the
Todd Bowles as coach of the year.
Yeah.
Like those are the three.
Yeah.
Shouldn't
for sure.
No one else should even be nominated.
It's game
No.
over by week 10 on this at this point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So last week the Rams roasted the Giants. I could go into details, but what you do need to know is that I told you Higbee would score a touchdown, and he did. It was only one catch, and it was
like
6
right
yards,
off too in
but
the game. Yeah, it is like right away.
that's fine. And also, we told you to start the Rams against the Giants, all of them, and you could. Now, Robert Woods,
like literally all of them.
all of them. Robert was this one who scored 2 touchdowns, but those are the only 2 touchdowns he scored all season. Also, he's only had 2 targets within the red zone, within 20 yards of the end zone. So all season. Now,
Hopefully that
I would
changes
start him
honestly.
again this week, though.
Yeah.
Guys,
Yeah.
Houston is not a good defense. I don't know what the deal is with the JJ Watt loss and now the Deshaun Watson loss, but guys, they give up. They're like a leaky bathtub, just releasing all sorts of fantasy points to whoever's around. So I want you to start everybody. The only kind of tough matchup is against the run, but are you really ever going to bench Todd Gurley? Stop. So you're starting everyone. I want you to start Robert Woods, Sammy Watkins, Cooper Kupp. I want you to start, obviously, Jared Goff, who's just intense. And by the way, again, the best streaming quarterback, as I keep telling you guys, in the National Football League, when he plays bad defenses, he balls out. NFC Offensive Player of the Week this week. When he plays good defenses, he does not. And mostly because he just hands the ball to Todd Gurley, which is great. But against bad defenses, he's amazing. Go play him. I'm also going to tell you guys that in case you're handcuffing Todd Gurley, which you should be doing these things, Malcolm Brown looks like he may have torn his MCL. He actually had a decent week last week and is out indefinitely right now. So it's going to be maybe a man named Justin Davis. If you're looking in a deep league to get a handcuff, Malcolm Brown probably out for the rest of the season.
Wow. All right. We got the Dallas Cowboys, the Atlanta Falcons.
I can't decide if this game's going to be a shootout or a disappointment.
Disappointment.
I'm leaning a little bit towards disappointment. Yeah, I'm not going to lie to you. But we'll start with Ezekiel Elliott, 'cause that's what we do. Because every single week we got to talk about something. So Elliott's hearing with the Second Circuit Court of Appeals is scheduled for Thursday, which is tomorrow because we are recording on Wednesday today. So when somebody says, well, what's due with the Elliott's, because we record this prior to the Elliott situation. So he will miss practice to attend the hearing. So as of right now, he's allowed to play until the court hands down a ruling. So you're playing him. He had another good game last week, but you play him until you hear that he's not allowed to play. So he's a must-start every week. Now, Dak Prescott, he came out like fire last week, as expected, as we predicted. He completed 21 of 33 passes for 249 yards and had 2 touchdowns and added 27 yards and an additional score with those shifty little feet of his. This is a bit more of a rough matchup for his receivers. So I would expect to be more between the 18 to 22 point range this week, which still isn't bad. That's still fine for a quarterback. But again, this is just one of those weeks where it could be a shootout, or it could be, again, where he barely scores 18 points. It's a tough one. Des Bryant, I am in my starting category. He did not practice Wednesday with what is considered a minor knee injury, as well as his ankle injury that has lingered a little bit all season. It can't be that serious of an injury, as he caught 6 of 11 targets for 73 yards last week. And it's rumored to not be serious, but he may not practice much this week, but I do expect him to play. I think it's vet rest is what we're experiencing right now. But keep your eye on it. Just keep your eye on it. Now, if he doesn't play, let's talk about those receivers. So Terrence Williams will step into the wide receiver 1 role if Bryant does not play. He caught all 9 of his targets last week for 141 yards. It was an insane week. But don't go crazy and think that he's going to do it again this week. It isn't going to happen. Williams has been a single-digit point scorer in standard leagues all other weeks than in this week. So this will be a much tougher matchup for him. Same goes for Cole Beasley, who got on the action last week, but 4 of 6, only 24 yards, but he had 2 touchdowns. Again, that's not going to happen this week. Last week was pretty much a
But if
cakewalk.
Des Bryant's out, which one would you
As I
prefer?
say, if Des Bryant's out, reality will hit again, and his value does go up. I would prefer Terrence Williams over Cole Beasley because Terrence Williams has been a little bit more involved in the offense overall all season than Cole Beasley. If I had to choose, and you're not playing Jason Witten, he's a terrible matchup. You're benching him.
Bench.
But I do think Dez is going to play. I think it's vet rest. I think that's what's going on here.
All right. Falcons.
Okay, guys. Anyone ready to be bored? Okay, guys. Well, Matt Ryan actually had one of his best games of the season, his best fantasy day, frankly, against the Carolina Panthers on the road, which was incredibly surprising. Over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. You can't get rid of these interceptions. It's like he's Phillip Rivers or something. Dallas is, a middle of the road option. I think that he'll be okay, but I'm not loving it. He is at home again. Right now, Julio Jones is questionable. So he did not practice on Wednesday due to a leg injury. We're not quite sure what's going on. He may have suffered a high ankle sprain in week 9 against the Panthers. He had a really good game, but, was able to put up 118 yards. Of course, no touchdown. It's Julio Jones, so we can't do that. But he hurt himself. So that's something you guys need to keep your eye on. Speaking of another injury you need to keep your eye on is Devontae Freeman. He was limited at practice due to a knee injury that he maybe suffered. Before that, he had a shoulder injury, which is why he was questionable last week. And again, he's just not getting it done. He hasn't had a touchdown since week 4 before their bye in week 5. Just nothing's really happening. On the other side of that, there's Tevin Coleman, who's just kind of been this consistent 9 to 15 point player, depending on if you're standard or PPR leagues. Last week, he was saved by a touchdown that he had on his one reception.
It was like goose egg to that point.
Yeah. But, depending on what happens with Freeman's injury, Coleman could have a larger role. It's a bad matchup for Austin Hooper. And again, Mohamed Sanu just keeps, either catching a lot of passes or scoring a touchdown. Last week, he caught all 3 of his targets at 23 yards and a touchdown. And, Taylor Gabriel had one of his best games where he had 56 yards. And that's his best. Stop talking to me about Taylor Gabriel. Also, I did want to tell you, though, that Matt Bryant suffered a leg injury last week in pregame warmups. Things did not look good, and I think you need to be worried. This is his 2nd time having an injury this season, and we love kickers here. I think you need to look elsewhere. Yeah.
So sad.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, well, here we go. We're going to go to the Cincinnati Bengals, the Tennessee Titans. Joe Mixon's gonna Joe Mixon. It was fine. He did a fine job with his 10 fantasy points. But that's all you got. Is 10
because he scored a touchdown. Because he has no yardage.
None.
He's worse than I thought he would be by such a long shot. It's nuts. and we didn't have high expectations. He's worse than the low expectations.
It's so good. Like every week, my husband's like, it's his week. I was like, oh, is it though? Is it? I don't think so. Listen, I don't know what to tell you other than the fact that he's going to get you anywhere between 6 and 10 fantasy points in standard leagues. If that's good enough for you, then you do it. If you believe in him and you think this is the week, then you just do it. Okay.
This week will be the week because AJ Green's suspended. So that's why this will be the week. No, I'm not for eight. That's what I'm going to say. Joe Mixon owners will say that that's the excuse. I don't believe it's the week.
You probably have to play him if he's on your team.
Sorry, he's not. He's not suspended. AJ Green's not suspended. Sorry, no. I meant to say they were to say last week because he got kicked out, but it wasn't.
Yeah, no, he's not suspended. Don't say that. I was going to say
Evans is
ranked number 2 quarterback.
Evans is suspended. Yeah.
Yes.
Which Evans I can't believe he wasn't suspended for literally punching Jalen Ramsey.
Whatever.
And like the chokehold.
It's not that big a deal, guys. It's fine.
Courtney just wants someone to talk about on this team.
Well,
it's kind of scary because actually, like, it's not like, as Brandon mentioned, like AJ Green has not been great. So it's kind of scary, but I do think he's going to be decent this week because I kind of think Andy Dalton's going to have a decent week against Tennessee. So I'm still, obviously you're starting AJ Green. You drafted him. You're playing him. I think he will have a better week this week. I think he'll get in double digits and it'll be fine. Obviously last week he got ejected. So we're just going to pretend like that didn't happen. And it was Jacksonville. So.
Yeah, we would have only gotten 4 points anyway.
It wasn't gonna be pretty.
Yeah, so I told you not to start him. So actually, but we're going to do better this week. Tennessee is no Jacksonville. Tyler Kroft, we have him ranked number 11. So if you need a tight end, I think this is a good place to stretch. I mean, he got 79 yards off of 2 catches, so that's not bad. There's upside with him. There's always upside with him. Cincinnati's defense is 15th. I'd almost put him higher than that. I do the defense rankings, but I think I would put him higher just because Marcus Mariota has really, really struggled this year. Just so you know, there are no other wide receivers for Cincinnati. They just don't employ those people. They just don't. So it's fine. You don't have to look
John Ross is going to be the greatest thing that's ever happened.
Ever.
No.
It's not going to happen. So we're moving on. We'll move to the Tennessee Titans. DeMarco Murray is practicing in full. But again, this is a really tough matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals. They're pretty darn tough against running backs. So just kind of temper your expectations. There's always the Derrick Henry of all, and he's not a bad choice. He's a great flex. But I don't know. I think we need to be a little bit excited that Delaney Walker came back and was like a thing for a second there. I think that was pretty exciting. He didn't practice though. So,
but he actually is old. That could be.
He is old, yeah. Vet rest.
So it could
like
be
my age.
Yeah. Right. And he does play through his injuries. He does. He just hasn't been doing well at all this year. And he actually got 7 fantasy points in standard leagues. Yeah. He got double digits in PPR because he caught all of his targets, which he usually catches a majority of his targets. So I like him a lot in PPR always. But it is nice to see him get some serious yardage last week. And I think he'll have an okay game. But again, tough matchup. I don't love Rashard Matthews and this Corey Davis character that everybody just loves Corey Davis. It's like, guys, it's still Tennessee and we're struggling here. We're really struggling this year. And this is a tough matchup. So I don't love him this week at all. Cincinnati gives up the 7th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. So, watch yourself. I mean, you can pick them off waivers if you have that extra spot. If you're like holding on to a Jamison Crowder or any Washington Redskin, really, then yeah, you can pick up Corey Davis, sure. But just, wait a minute because he plays Pittsburgh after this week. And again, Pittsburgh's defense is really tough now. Then he gets Indianapolis, which is fabulous. And then Arizona in week 14, which is also fabulous. But then in your playoffs, you get the 49ers, which is great. But then you get the Rams in your championship game. That, my friends, is not great. So that's my Tennessee news. Sorry, not uplifting at all. I don't hate them. They're just not working well together. I still believe. I believe. That's my thing. New York Giants and San Francisco 49ers. Game of the week. Who's going to win this game, guys?
Yeah, exactly.
Dirty.
One of these
Dirty.
teams is going to win. I think we have to say the Giants because the 49ers.
I got to say Giants.
So depleted.
It's so bad. Okay, so obviously the big news here is that there are players now coming out saying that they, quote, hate Ben McAdoo. Also, Dan Schneier, friend of the show that we had on in the preseason to talk about the New York Giants, has reported that he has sources that say that we are within the time that Ben McAdoo will be fired. And I don't normally advocate for people losing their jobs. I think it's kind of sad, talking about people getting fired and things. I just think that this maybe isn't the right job for him, head coach. Maybe he's more of a coordinator. So, it's okay. I think that maybe this is going to be like a Band-Aid. Let's just rip it off. But in the meantime, I think you can start Orleans Darkwa. And I say this because Orleans Darkwa actually rushed 16 times for 71 yards and caught both of his targets for 8 yards. He did not score a touchdown, but the San Francisco 49ers gave up the absolute most rushing yards to opposing running backs. And him getting 18 touches in a game script that was the worst you could imagine for a running back, where they got their butts kicked, I think it's actually a positive sign for him in terms of usage. Now, they did give Wayne Gallman 9 touches because they just won't give it up. But it is very clear that Orleans Darkwa is by far and away the most dynamic running back. So I think he's definitely a true sleeper. Eli Manning, still not getting it happen. However, Ben McAdoo came out and said he is still our starter, but we might look elsewhere later. I'm like, no, dude, you're going to get fired before you do that. And I'm not an Eli Manning fan. Let the guy retire at the end of the year and start doing your
stop
job.
This talk. Yeah.
Yeah, please.
You think he's going to retire?
I think I would say I am 85% sure that Eli Manning is going to retire at the end of this year.
Wow. I am not at 85%.
Yeah, because I think the Giants are going to kindly speak to him about it. Like, we just want you to retire as a Giant. He could go to the Browns. That would be great. I just think it's too far gone. But I think no matter what, Ben McAdoo's gone, and they're not going to let him bench Eli Manning on his way out. That's just so stupid. So that's just not going to happen. I think they respect him too much for that. So the interesting thing is that Evan Engram again outscored Eli Manning last week. So Evan Engram is also a guy. In fact, I've ranked him, I think, number 2 for tight ends this week, and I feel good about it. I think he's going to be just A-okay. The San Francisco 49ers give up a ton of fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Don't talk to me about how they give up a lot of points to quarterbacks too against Eli Manning. And in good and bad matchups, he hasn't been able to get it done. And, Sterling Shepard, if you're in PPR, again, 9 targets last week, caught 5 of them for 70 yards. His first game back from injury. That surprised me, actually. So obviously he's healthy. I think he's good to go. You might be like, who's Tavares King? Because Tavares King was the guy who scored the touchdown. You stopped that. Mm-hmm. Anyway, there you go.
All right, the 49ers. You got to love it when the running back is projected more fantasy points than the quarterback. I just love that about the 49ers. With that said, you could start Carlos Hyde. Hyde got double digits points. Even with getting ejected in the fourth quarter, you can run on the Giants. 5 running backs have had double digits against the Giants lately. And that is with 2 teams in between that really struggle at running. So he's ranked number 10, and I think he's very good. CJ Berthard. Okay, so my mother-in-law is watching my game, and she goes, oh, poor boy. I bet he got made fun of so much. I look at her, and I was like, what the heck? She's like, well, his last name's Beat Hard.
Oh, no.
Yes, it is.
Oh, my God. Mother-in-law. Oh, my God.
I never noticed it either.
Yes.
Bethard. No, it's
now I can never look at it again.
Oh man, that ruins it so much.
Really does.
It does. It really does.
You ruined it for everybody here. Beat Hard.
Oh, it's so good. All right, but listen, he did do better than I thought he would. But he did. He hadn't run. He had to run in for a touchdown, and he would have had 12 fantasy points. So if he never threw. He's never thrown for a touchdown, which means he's only had 2 touchdowns in the last 4 games and twice as many interceptions. So it's not my jam. Marquise Goodwin, he is the number 1 receiver on the 49ers. He saw 8 targets last week, but only caught 2 for 68 yards. He's super risky. This is a great matchup, and I understand, but 2 wide receivers had double digits last week for the Rams, including Sammy Watkins, who only caught 1 pass. So there is upside there because I think that Marquise Goodwin could possibly only catch 1 pass. So, if it goes for yardage and a touchdown, then that's fabulous. But that is extremely risky to play. Just saying. Extremely risky. The 49ers game plan is not exactly the same as the LA Rams, just so you know. But Robbie Gould is on the bench, unfortunately. The 49ers defense is on the bench. Kittle has been ruled out with an ankle injury. So is Trent Taylor with a broken rib, and that is after losing Pierre Garçon last week for the year with a neck injury. So
really sad.
Yikes. All right, we got the New England Patriots, the Denver Broncos.
So the must start for sure is going to be Rob Gronkowski. He has the best matchup of the week for sure against the Denver Broncos, who for whatever reason cannot
defend tight ends.
It's just it's pathetic. Tom Brady is going to do just fine against them. I couldn't act like a homer and say that he's going to tank. I think it'll be fine. I would check on weather. It is Denver, and weather can change often. And we are now in that November area. Right now, the weather is projected to be sunny with a high of 53, which would be perfect. But I could also see us 48 hours from now saying, actually, it's going to be a blizzard and best of luck to you. So just make sure that you pay attention to that. The Denver is, of course, good at defending against wide receivers and running backs. So I don't really love anybody here, but I think that if you have Brandon Cooks, you're probably going to start him. And, again, the James White, Deion Lewis debate is just annoying to me, and I have no interest in it. But if you're interested, I guess those are your guys. I will say, though, that Chris Hogan right now is listed as doubtful, and supposedly, reportedly, he is still in his sling. So I don't really know what that all is going to look like. Now they're saying that they want to get Philip Dorsett more involved. That is just too crazy for my blood, but you do you. And also a reminder that Brian Hoyer was traded there without being traded there. He got released so that the Patriots could pick him up. They just signed him to a 3-year contract. Do you think they think Tom Brady is going to play for 3 more years?
Right.
And they're just keeping Hoyer there. Back. I'm dead serious, you guys. I think this is an intriguing number for the amount of years on his contract. And I'll say this. Amendola is also limited on Wednesday's practice. The only slight credence I'll give to this Philip Dorsett thing is if both Amendola and Hogan are out, they're going to have to throw to Dorsett at least a little bit. But against the Broncos, so you don't really love the wide receiver situation anyway. No. I would definitely start the Patriots defense, even though they haven't been good this year, because neither has the Denver Broncos offense, and you can start Gostkowski.
Fabulous. The Broncos.
So I'm not all in on the Denver Bronco defense. I don't have to start with starters, but I think as Brandon led off, when your best matchup for the Patriots is the tight end, and that is your best player on your team, and Gronk can just single-handedly destroy a team, this game could get ugly and out of hand really quickly. Yeah, really quickly. And even to some extent, I'm going to even go so far as to say perhaps not even to the fault of the defense, but I think the time of possession is going to be just so outrageous that what can you do? What can you do? So,
and why do we have to watch this in prime time? That's my question. I know. It's start flexing games, NFL.
It's going to be so bad. But I will say, I think you can start Demaryius Thomas. He, it was 8 of 12 for 70 yards, and he had a touchdown. It was a garbage touchdown, but you know what? Never has a touchdown been more needed to improve somebody's psyche as that touchdown. It has been 15 games since he has scored, and he was his first touchdown of the year. So you know what? That touchdown was very, very needed. It is, in theory, a great matchup. As Courtney said, the Patriots defense of old is not the Patriots defense this year. So it is a really good matchup. So I feel good about starting Demaryius Thomas, despite the piss poor quarterback play that we will see in prime time on Sunday night. The only thing that could possibly stop you from wanting to play Demaryius Thomas is that about his hamstring. So it is still bothering him. He did not practice on Wednesday. So make sure that you look at your injury reports. I think he will play, but keep an eye on that. Sleepers. Okay. Emmanuel Sanders, he played only 45% of the snaps, and he only caught 1 of his 5 targets, which was for 30 yards. And then he basically, as you saw, you would see pictures of him just looking sad on the bench the second half of the game for the most part. I think his ankle is still bothering him. I think that is very clear. I don't think he's 100%. He was limited in practice on Wednesday, so clearly he is still not good to go. So don't play him unless you absolutely have to. I really do not think that you should play Emmanuel Sanders. I would say flex at best. And even then, again, I am strongly encouraging you to bench Emmanuel Sanders this week. Now, equally frustrating is this Denver backfield that I get to talk about every single week. So we're going to look at the touches as a comparison here. Okay, so the distribution is as follows. CJ Anderson, 9 touches in total. 9 of those were rush attempts for 13 yards and 0 catches of his one target for 0 yards. Devontae Booker, he had 8 touches, so 1 less than Anderson, but 6 of those rush attempts for 21 yards and 2 of 3 catches for 9 yards. Again, terrible. Jamal Charles, 8 touches, so the same as Booker. 4 of those were rush attempts for 1 yard, awful, and then 4 for 23 yards in terms of the catch. So we are in a full-on 3-headed committee monster here. In theory, Anderson is still the lead back. What I will say is that CJ did hurt his ankle in the game, and he's been limited in practice on Wednesday, which might explain why we saw a little bit more of that even shift. But quite honestly, we've been seeing an even shift for a while now, and the Broncos just seem to really like Booker. I don't quite understand it.
That's a total of it's 78 yards.
It's terrible. It is terrible. And when you've got Trevor Siemian's been struggling, the last 4 games before he got pulled. Brock, who was going to struggle. We all knew he was going to struggle, and he did struggle. Why you're only rushing this amount is beyond me. It is literally absolutely beyond me. Which brings us to our news of Broncos place quarterback Chad Kelly on the IR. So this leaves us in a full-on Brock and potentially Lynch later in the year dilemma. Brock did not have a great game, 19 of 38 for 208 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, and was sacked 3 times. That is not great, folks. But the Broncos are going to stick with him this week. He is the starting quarterback, so be prepared for that. And the Broncos did place tight end Jake Butt on IR as well, that is actually a pretty major bummer because he's a really interesting play, and I think he's going to add a lot of depth and to this team in a tight end position that just really doesn't have a strong offensive positioning to it, but he's on the IR. So again, as I stated early, this game is going to get ugly very, very quickly.
Amazing. All right, Miami Dolphins, the Carolina Panthers.
So I didn't think I'd start off this way, but Cutler actually came out to play last week.
He gets one.
I will say, you are not playing Jay Cutler. Let's be very, very clear. But this did benefit the 2 starters that you can play on this team. Jarvis Landry, who caught 6 of 7 passes for 37 yards and a touchdown, as well as Devontae Parker, who caught 5 of 8 for 76 yards. Both are must starts. What I will say is Parker still seems to be the receiver that Cutler likes to go to. Again, Landry's usually pretty good for a touchdown, but there seems to be a connection between Parker and Cutler that unfortunately has basically phased out Kenny Stills. So sleepers, Damian Williams, we got our 2 running backs. Welcome to a full-on committee in Miami as well now that Ajayi is gone. Damian Williams rushed 7 times for 14 yards, caught 6 passes for 47 and a touchdown. Kenyon Drake had 9 carries for 69 yards. So again, Gase seems pleased to see this. With that said, it's a terrible, terrible matchup. The Panthers give the 3rd fewest points to running backs. Of all the running backs who have faced the Panthers, Alvin Kamara has done the best. So in theory, Williams has the edge in this game just because he is a bit more of the pass receiving back out of the 2. But even then, Kamara did not have a great game. Without his touchdown, it would have been terrible. So don't get too excited for these guys. You probably shouldn't play them. What I will say is, Julius Thomas, I hate you. I just hate you. He caught 6 of 8 passes for 84 yards and a touchdown. And in that one game, he scored almost the exact same amount of points of all of his other games combined in that one game. And Julius Thomas is the kind of player that people get really excited about. So now that he's had one game, everyone's going to go out there and want to play him. Please do not do that. Yes, he's got the best matchup on the team, but don't do this to yourself. Do not play him. And then, as we said again, Kenny Stills, he's getting phased out with Parker being there. He was only targeted 4 times, caught 3 of them for 28 yards, but Parker being back kills him. And Cutler, do not do it. Just don't do it.
All right, the Panthers. Christian McCaffrey had his best game of the season last week, rushing 15 times for 66 yards and a touchdown while adding 5 catches for 28 yards. Not bad at all. This week will be more difficult for him, but I like his volume. I think he will get anywhere between 9 and 12 fantasy points for standard league, so that's not bad at all. Graham Gano, the kicker you're playing. Carolina's defense you are playing. Cam Newton really struggled last week with only throwing 137 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. The only way you got decent fantasy points last week was with him using his feet and rushing for 86 yards and a touchdown. You might be able to run against Atlanta, but you can't run against Miami. The quarterback with the most rushing yards against the Dolphins was Flacco with 9 yards, and we all saw what the Miami Dolphins did to him when he ran.
Oh, that's a good point.
Hold on, waiter.
Wait a minute.
Wait
a minute. Yep. Check, please.
Gosh, so sad.
Check, please. Newton can't afford to get hurt, so he shouldn't be running too much on Monday night. Sorry, you guys. Do not love Mr. Cam Newton. I know we have him ranked high, but I do not love him this week. I think it's going to be
That's because all the quarterbacks suck. I sat there looking at my rankings being like, can anyone be better than this? And no, everyone sucks.
I am playing McCown over Cam Newton this week. And I just is what it is. It's just a really this team is perfectly built to stop Cam Newton. And if Cam Newton can't already stop himself. And due to that fact, then with Newton clearly isn't doing well with recovering from his shoulder surgery this offseason, Funchess is no more than a flex option this week. Curtis Samuel is the wide receiver 2 for this team for now, just in case you need somebody to pick up for maybe a flyer in the future. But I don't love any of this, you guys. I just don't love any of this. And it might be raining, so that isn't good for these receivers either. Jonathan Stewart is on the bench, obviously. Ended up fumbling the ball twice last week and got fantasy owners negative points. And this is the second game in negative points in the last 4 games. Not good, guys. I know Coach Rivera says he still trusts him, but I wouldn't do it.
No.
Ed Dixon on your bench. He had 0 points last week off of 2 targets. This is the Panthers' best matchup, though. But yikes. If you're relying on Ed Dixon, Jonathan Stewart, you're not listening to our show because your season's over.
We're just excited for Greg Olsen to come back.
Yeah.
Bring back Greg Olsen.
Yeah. I mean, listen,
It's coming.
I've been holding on to him all year, so I hope so. Come back to me, Mr. Greg Olsen. Come back. I need you. But that's it, you guys. That is our Week 12 show. Again, get them out of your lineup. The Baltimore Ravens, Kansas City Chiefs, Oakland Raiders, and the Philadelphia Eagles. They are all on bye. Chat with us on Twitter at HerFantasyFB. Also, you can listen to our radio show on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio from 9 to 11 Eastern on Saturday nights. You guys, you can get us twice. You can call in, ask your questions. It's a delightful, delightful experience. Oh, guys, good luck. Until next time, no more faking it.